There are moments in life that never announce themselves. They don't knock on your door. They don't arrive with music or fireworks or dramatic speeches. They simply appear in the middle of an ordinary day, quietly changing something inside you while the rest of the world continues exactly as it was. This is the story of one of those moments. And strangely enough, it began with a picture. Not because it was the most beautiful photograph I had ever seen. Not because it was professionally taken. Not because it was perfect. It mattered because it was honest. Some photographs capture a face. Some capture a smile. Some capture a memory. But every once in a while, a photograph captures a soul before the person standing inside it even realizes they have revealed it. Yours did. And ever since that day, I haven't been able to look at pictures the same way again. Because now I know something most people never discover. A picture doesn't always show someone. Sometimes, it tells everything they were too quiet to say. I never planned to tell you this. Some truths feel safer when they stay inside us. They become silent companions that walk beside us through ordinary days, asking for nothing except a little space inside the heart. For a long time, I thought this would become one of those truths. Something I would carry quietly until time softened it. But time didn't soften it. Time made it clearer. Every day it became less of a feeling, and more of a certainty. Eventually I understood something. Silence protects fear. It never protects love. Love deserves daylight. So tonight, I'm choosing honesty. Not because I'm fearless. But because some people become too important to keep loving in silence. You became one of those people. I still remember exactly where I was. The room was almost dark except for the pale light spilling from my phone. Outside, the world had already fallen asleep. Cars had disappeared. Conversations had ended. Even the wind sounded tired. It was one of those rare nights where everything becomes so quiet that you can finally hear your own heart speaking. Most people avoid those moments. I think they're afraid of what they might discover. I was no different. I kept scrolling without thinking. One picture after another. Faces. Places. Random moments from lives I would forget within seconds. Nothing stayed. Nothing mattered. Until you appeared. And somehow, everything stopped. Not the world. Just me. My thumb froze. My breathing changed. Time suddenly forgot how to move. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't surprise. It felt more like recognition. The strange feeling of finding something your heart has been searching for long before your mind understood what it wanted. I stared at your picture longer than I intended. At first I tried to convince myself I was simply appreciating a beautiful photograph. But beautiful things don't usually make the room feel quieter. They don't slow your heartbeat. They don't leave you wondering why your chest suddenly feels both lighter and heavier at the same time. This wasn't admiration. It was something deeper. Something with roots. Then I noticed something most people probably missed. Your eyes. Not because of their color. Not because they were perfect. Because they looked like they had lived. There was kindness there. Not the loud kind that wants recognition. The quiet kind. The kind that helps people without telling anyone afterward. There was patience. The kind created by surviving things no one ever applauded. There was softness. But beneath that softness, strength. The kind that never needs to prove itself. Your eyes reminded me of calm water. From the surface everything seems peaceful. But underneath, there is an entire world. I kept wondering how many people had looked at that same photograph, without ever seeing that world. Probably most of them. People are often too busy looking, to truly see. That night, I wanted to see. Not your appearance. You. Without realizing it, I smiled. It wasn't a dramatic smile. It was the kind that arrives quietly. The kind you only notice after it's already there. I can't explain why. Some people carry peace with them without knowing it. They enter rooms, and the air somehow becomes easier to breathe. You have that gift. Maybe no one has ever told you. Maybe they noticed it without finding the words. Or maybe they were too distracted by everything visible to notice the invisible things that make someone unforgettable. Because what stayed with me wasn't your face. It was your presence. Even inside a photograph, your presence reached me. How does someone do that? How does a still image carry warmth? How does silence feel like conversation? I still don't know. All I know, is that yours did. I should have kept scrolling. That would have been the sensible thing. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I saved the picture. Not because I wanted to own it. People don't save sunsets because they own the sky. They save them because beauty deserves another look. Your picture wasn't something I wanted to possess. It was something I didn't want to lose. There's a difference. A very important difference. One comes from selfishness. The other, comes from gratitude. Because sometimes life places something unexpectedly beautiful in front of you, and your only instinct is to protect the feeling it created. That's all I wanted to protect. The feeling. Not the photograph. The warmth. The calm. The quiet certainty that somewhere in this noisy world, someone like you existed. Hours passed without asking permission. I didn't notice. The room stayed silent. The night grew older. But somehow, I wasn't alone anymore. Your picture sat on the screen. And for reasons I still struggle to explain, the loneliness I had carried for months quietly stepped outside for a while. Nothing magical happened. You didn't suddenly speak. The photograph didn't change. Yet something inside me did. Maybe healing always begins this way. Not with answers, but with presence. Not with miracles, but with one small reminder that beauty still exists. That hope still exists. That softness hasn't disappeared from the world. Sometimes, one picture is enough to remind someone to keep believing. Yours reminded me. And that was the beginning of everything. I never expected a photograph to become a conversation. Pictures are supposed to stay silent. They are supposed to freeze a single second and leave the rest to memory. But yours refused to remain silent. Every time I looked at it, it seemed to ask me a different question. Not with words, with stillness. And I learned something about stillness that night. The quietest things often speak the loudest. For days, I tried to behave as though nothing had happened. I answered messages, finished my work, laughed when people expected me to laugh. Everything looked normal from the outside. But inside, there was a place I kept returning to. A single photograph. Not because I was escaping reality. Because somehow it reminded me of it. The strange thing about peace is that you don't always recognize it while you're living inside it. Sometimes you only notice it after you've been without it for a long time. That picture gave me peace. A kind I hadn't felt in years. Not excitement. Not obsession. Peace. And that's much rarer. One evening I opened my gallery without thinking. My fingers already knew where they wanted to go. I smiled at myself. So this is becoming a habit. Maybe it was. But not every habit is unhealthy. Some habits remind us who we are. Some remind us who we're becoming. Yours became both. Every time I looked at your picture, I wasn't searching for something new. I was returning to something true. There's a difference. The world teaches us to chase excitement. But the heart searches for peace. And every time I found your face on my screen, my heart became quiet. I started noticing details I had somehow missed before. Not because they suddenly appeared. Because I finally slowed down enough to see them. The way your smile never asked for attention. The calm resting naturally across your expression. The honesty that cannot be edited into a photograph. Some people smile because they're happy. Others smile because they're trying to hide something. Yours felt different. It carried strength. The kind that survives difficult days without announcing the battle. It made me wonder, how many storms had you already walked through? How many disappointments had quietly shaped your kindness? How many times had life tried to make you harder, only for you to choose softness again? I didn't know the answers. But somehow, I could feel the questions. That frightened me. Not because I was learning about you. Because I was learning about myself. I realized I had become someone who noticed silence more than noise. Someone who admired gentleness more than perfection. Someone who could spend 20 minutes looking at one honest expression instead of 1,000 perfect ones. Maybe that's what love quietly does. It changes your priorities before it ever changes your life. It teaches your eyes to value different things. One night I placed my phone beside me instead of holding it. Your picture remained on the screen. The room was dark. No music. No television. No distractions. Just silence. For a while, I simply watched. Not the picture. The feeling. I wanted to understand it. Most emotions arrive loudly. They demand names, labels, definitions. But this one refused. It didn't want a title. It wanted honesty. So instead of asking myself, do I love this person? I ask something much simpler. How do I become whenever I think about them? The answer came almost immediately. Kinder. Calmer. More patient. More grateful. More hopeful. You didn't just make me feel something. You made me become someone better while feeling it. And perhaps, that is the purest definition of love I have ever known. I began speaking before I realized I was speaking. Not rehearsed speeches. Not dramatic confessions. Simple thoughts. I hope today was gentle with you. I hope someone made you smile. I hope you're resting. I hope you're not carrying everything alone. No one answered. I wasn't expecting an answer. Sometimes love isn't asking to be heard. Sometimes it simply needs somewhere safe to exist. That night, the silence became that place. People often believe love begins with grand moments. I don't think it does. I think it begins with small acts nobody else ever sees. Checking whether someone got home safely. Remembering tiny details they forgot they told you. Praying for them without mentioning it. Smiling because something reminded you of them. Hoping their tomorrow is kinder than their yesterday. Love grows quietly. Like sunrise. No one notices the exact second darkness becomes light. Yet somehow, morning always arrives. My feelings for you arrived like that. Without permission. Without announcement. Without asking whether the timing was convenient. One ordinary day, they simply existed. And from that day forward, they never left. Then I understood why I had saved your picture. It wasn't because I feared forgetting your face. That was never going to happen. It was because your picture reminded me of the person I became whenever you entered my thoughts. A softer version. A quieter version. A more honest version. The photograph became less about you, and more about what your existence awakened inside me. That's why it mattered. Not because it captured your appearance. Because it revealed my heart. I closed the gallery that night. Placed the phone face down. Looked toward the ceiling. And laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. Because the truth had finally become impossible to avoid. I had spent weeks believing I was protecting myself by keeping everything inside. But love doesn't disappear when it's hidden, it simply grows roots. And mine had already reached places inside me I didn't know existed. There was no running anymore. No pretending. No carefully edited explanations. Only one undeniable truth remained. That photograph had never been just a picture. It was a mirror. Every time I looked at it, I wasn't only seeing you. I was discovering the man I wanted to become because you existed. And perhaps, that is why some pictures change our lives. Not because they show us someone extraordinary, but because they reveal something extraordinary within ours. There is something I have never told anyone. Not because I was hiding it. Because I never found words that were gentle enough to carry it. Some feelings are like fragile glass. The moment you force them into language, they lose a little of their light. So I kept this one inside me, waiting for the day when honesty would finally become stronger than fear. I think that day is today. People often ask when love begins. They expect an exact answer. A date. A place. A conversation. A first meeting. But I don't think love arrives like that. I think it gathers. Quietly. Patiently. Like rain filling a river one drop at a time until one morning you suddenly realize, the river has become too deep to cross. That's what happened to me. It wasn't one smile. It wasn't one photograph. It wasn't one conversation. It was every small moment collecting inside my heart until there was no empty space left. And somewhere along that quiet journey, your picture became the place where all those moments met. It never demanded attention. It simply held the truth I had been avoiding. This picture tells everything. Not because it is perfect, but because every time I look at it, I remember every feeling I never had the courage to say. I stopped trying to understand why you mattered so much. Some questions become smaller when you finally stop asking them. The heart has its own language. It doesn't always explain itself. It simply knows. Mine knew long before I did. Long before I admitted it. Long before I was brave enough to call it love. There was one evening I almost deleted the picture. I stared at the screen with my thumb resting above the button. I told myself it would make everything easier. Maybe if the picture disappeared, the feelings would disappear too. What a strange lie we tell ourselves. As though deleting a photograph could erase the place someone has already built inside your soul. I smiled. Locked the phone. And realized something. The picture was never the reason. It was only the reminder. You had already become part of the quiet places inside me. No button could change that. Sometimes I wonder if you know what your presence does to people. Not because you try, but because some souls naturally leave light wherever they go. You don't have to speak loudly. You don't have to impress anyone. You don't have to become someone else. You simply arrive, and the atmosphere changes. I've watched people smile around you without realizing why. I've watched ordinary moments become memorable simply because you were standing inside them. That's a rare gift. The rarest, perhaps. Not beauty. Not intelligence. Not success. Presence. The kind that cannot be learned. The kind that cannot be copied. The kind that quietly changes hearts without asking permission. That is what your picture carries. Presence. Even in silence. Even without movement. Even without a single word. One night I asked myself a question. If this picture disappeared forever, what would remain? The answer came immediately. Everything. Because the photograph no longer lives inside my phone. It lives inside my memory. Inside my mornings. Inside the pauses between busy hours. Inside every quiet prayer where your happiness appears before my own. That frightened me for a second. Then strangely, it comforted me. Because it reminded me that real love isn't dependent on photographs. Or messages. Or distance. Or perfect timing. Real love survives all of those things. It becomes part of the person who carries it. I used to believe courage meant never being afraid. Now I think courage is something much quieter. It's telling the truth while your hands are still shaking. It's choosing honesty even when silence would protect you. It's risking misunderstanding because pretending has finally become heavier than being vulnerable. That's where I found myself. Standing between fear and truth. Looking at your picture. Realizing only one of them could stay. Fear had been with me long enough. It was truth's turn. If I could describe you in one sentence, I wouldn't describe your face. I wouldn't describe your smile. I'd say this: you are the calm my heart returns to after every storm. Because that's what you became. Not excitement. Not fantasy. Home. A place inside my soul where everything finally stops running. Where I no longer have to prove anything. Where I can simply exist. That is what your picture reminds me of every single time. Not what you look like, but how you make life feel. There is a strange beauty in realizing someone has changed you without ever asking them to. You didn't teach me through speeches. You taught me through your existence. You reminded me that gentleness is still strength. That kindness is never weakness. That patience creates deeper roots than pride ever could. You never knew you were teaching me. Perhaps the greatest teachers never do. Sometimes I imagine years from now. The world older. Us older. Life completely different from today. I wonder if I'll still remember this picture. Then I laugh. Because by then, I probably won't need it anymore. Some photographs begin as memories. But the truly special ones become part of who you are. You stop looking at them because eventually, you start carrying them within you. And maybe that's what this picture was always meant to become. Not something saved in a gallery. Something written into my heart. So if anyone ever asked me why I kept this picture, I wouldn't tell them it was because you looked beautiful. Beauty fades with familiarity. This never did. I'd tell them something much simpler. I kept it because every time I forgot how gentle the world could be, this picture reminded me. And maybe that's the greatest gift one human being can ever give another. Not excitement. Not perfection. Hope. You gave me hope without knowing it. And hope has a way of changing everything. This picture never needed words. It never needed explanations. It never asked to be understood. Because from the very beginning, this picture told everything my heart was too afraid to say. There is only one thing left to say. Not because I've run out of words, but because every honest story eventually reaches a place where words become smaller than the feeling they are trying to carry. This is that place. If you have listened this far, then you already know the truth. The picture was never the story. You were. From the very beginning. I only thought I had saved a photograph. What I really saved was the moment my heart finally stopped pretending. A single image became the quiet witness to everything I had been too afraid to admit. Every glance at it reminded me that love doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives like dawn, slowly, gently, without asking anyone's permission. And before you realize it, the whole sky has changed. That is what happened to me. Without drama. Without grand promises. Without trying. You simply became the place my heart returned to whenever life became too loud. People spend their lives searching for extraordinary moments. I think they're searching in the wrong places. Extraordinary moments don't always happen on mountaintops or under fireworks. Sometimes they happen alone, in a quiet room, with nothing more than a photograph glowing softly in your hands. Sometimes an ordinary picture changes an ordinary person forever. Mine did. Not because it showed perfection, but because it reminded me that some people carry peace without ever realizing they do. You are one of those people. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't understand that night. I wasn't falling in love with a picture. I was recognizing the feeling that had been growing inside me long before that picture existed. The photograph didn't create the love. It revealed it. Like sunrise doesn't create the morning. It simply lets us see what was already there. That's why every time I looked at your picture, I wasn't searching for your face. I was searching for that quiet feeling of home. And somehow, I always found it. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. Life has a way of writing chapters we never expect. People change. Roads separate. Dreams take us in different directions. Nothing in this world promises forever. But there is one thing I know with complete certainty. No matter where life carries me, I will always be grateful that there was once a person whose presence taught my heart how to become softer. That person is you. And gratitude like that never disappears. If one day this photograph is lost, if my phone breaks, if time erases every digital memory I ever saved, it still won't matter. Because the picture has already completed its purpose. It moved from my gallery, into my soul. No one can delete that. No distance can weaken it. No passing year can rewrite it. Some memories stop belonging to technology. They become part of who we are. You became part of who I am. Maybe years from now you'll never remember this confession. Maybe you'll smile when you think about it. Maybe you'll quietly forget it. And that's okay. Because love isn't measured by what it receives. It's measured by how honestly it is given. I never wanted to own your heart. I only wanted mine to stop hiding from yours. Today, it finally has. There is one last confession. The one I've been carrying until the very end. I don't think I saved your picture because I was afraid of losing you. I saved it because I was afraid of losing the version of myself that only appeared whenever I thought about you. The calmer version. The kinder version. The man who remembered to slow down. The man who believed the world was still capable of producing people with gentle hearts. You reminded me of the person I always wanted to become. That is a gift beyond words. So if anyone ever asks me, what was so special about that picture? I won't tell them about the lighting, or the smile, or the composition. I'll simply answer. Because it told me everything before either of us ever said a single word. It told me that peace has a face. That kindness has eyes. That hope sometimes arrives quietly. That love doesn't always begin with a conversation. Sometimes, it begins with recognition. With stillness. With one heartbeat deciding, I have finally found the place where I belong. And if I could leave you with only one sentence, the sentence I hope stays with you long after every other word has faded, it would be this. Some pictures capture a moment. Yours captured my heart. And before I ever found the courage to tell you how deeply I loved you, your picture had already told you everything. So tonight, I don't need another confession. I don't need another promise. I don't even need another photograph. Because the truth has finally stepped out of the silence where it lived for so long. No more hidden feelings. No more borrowed courage from midnight. No more conversations with a screen. Only this, a heart that finally chose honesty over fear. A soul that found peace in someone else's presence. And a picture that never needed words. Because from the very first moment I saw it, it told everything. The end.